This is a short section of a longer conversation between Erin and myself. In this section, we're talking about what is now part one of our interview process, our skill assessment. We're going to talk about why we love this process and how we've tweaked it over the years to help us uncover so much information about candidates before we schedule a video interview. This is a really valuable piece of content to watch if you are an employer and you want to level up your screening process. And it's also really helpful if you're a candidate because you're going to learn about what recruiters and employers like us are looking for when we ask you to complete these assignments. If you'd like to watch the full conversation, make sure to click that link above. Let's dig in. We've really worked hard for years to hone in the questions that we ask. And I think I always feel like I have to put a little asterisk when I share those skill assessments with a client, because you say, I know this looks really simple. We ask them to, for example, upload a calendar invite, but there are so many little steps in having them do that. Did they make a typo in what the calendar invite is supposed to say? Did they take a photograph and upload it, or did they take a screenshot? Can they follow basic instructions? Did they get
Exactly.
it for the right day and time? I mean, it's such a silly assignment, but so many people mess it up. And I think
It's very telling.
and then I think from the candidate perspective, I think it's really helpful to understand that we are looking at the whole picture. How long did it take you to do the assignment? How thorough were your answers? Did you fully answer? Not just did you get it right, but how did you answer the question? And so your conscientiousness really shows through in these assignments, and you just can't capture that when you use a standardized test. So if we just used, multiple choice, like automated screening tool, you just don't get the same results as actually reading somebody's assignment. Every once in a while, you'll send me an assignment that you're really excited about. I mean, somebody really gave you context and really answered questions. How does that translate when you actually talk to those people on video?
Ooh, it shines through. They have a lot more confidence in their skill set. And you can tell it wasn't something that they just put little or no thought into, or maybe they utilized Chat GPT for nothing against resources, right? But that's not the point of the process, right? So what I've noticed is that those candidates are often more excited about the role. They have more to offer and more details that they can share in the time that we spend together during our video interview. And it really makes them stand out because often we'll touch on those points that were really impressive that they completed in the skill assessment. And where did we come up with this? How did this come to be? What situation were you in that you had to go to, set extreme or so on and so forth to implement this particular concept to help drive your team forward? So it's really also a talking point. It's not just to make sure that, hey, you can answer these questions, you can do it in an error-free manner using grammar, punctuation, all of those things. We're really looking for the insight into what you're doing in your current role and why you're an asset to your current team and how you could be moving forward.
And I feel like we need to go back and explain what kind of questions we ask because we sort of jumped ahead. So, for an example, a typical question might be something around the lines of, tell me about a time when you identified a process or system that was inefficient and how you improved it and what was the outcome. So that would
Right.
be a short essay question that we would ask. And so we're looking for, did you actually answer the whole question? Not just this was the problem and what I did, but also what was the outcome? I mean, that piece is so key when you're interviewing. You have to tie it all together. And did you organize your thoughts in a cohesive manner? Did it take you 3 pages to write this, or were you able to concisely answer the question? All of this just gives us so much good information. And so we ask what? It depends on the role, maybe 3 to 5 questions, and we try to not let them be too lengthy. We're mindful of how long this could take somebody, but you get so much information from that assignment versus a 10-minute phone interview. It's just wild.
Yes, absolutely. And it's the skills that we're actually looking for. Most people can hold a conversation on the phone, right? That's a given. But when it comes to applying, the skills that you have, whether it be attention to detail, that you follow directions well, that you can take the lead, that you can communicate clearly in writing. These are, far more valuable than being able to hold a simple conversation over the phone and give us so much more to work with.
Now, the other thing that I think if you were an employer listening to this, you might think, well, I don't want to sit in front of somebody that I haven't had a conversation with. What's the ratio of people who pass the skill assessment, but then are also a good fit once they've passed the video interview? How have you seen that ratio change? So we used to do a phone interview, and then they did a skill assessment, and then people would show up to video, and not all of them passed the video interview, right? So are you finding a better or worse ratio to people who pass the video interview?
Much more improved. There's a lot more follow through with the people that complete the assessment well, and then produce an outstanding interview that really helps them land that position.
Yeah, isn't that so interesting? And I just think about all of the hours and time that we spent chasing people down to schedule phone interviews. And then you can only do 3 in an hour, and you have to take notes. And then you've talked to 10 people in a day, and you have to remember, what did you like about all these different people? And instead, everything's just captured in writing, and they can do it in their own time. And so it's like we said, it saves them time and it saves us time. And it cuts at least 2 to 3 days off the interview cycle.
Well, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. If somebody, either I found them or they applied that day and they have the time to complete that assessment that day. I mean, I have had people where I've contacted them in the morning and they've completed it in the evening. We interview the next morning, and then at the end of the day, they're being submitted to our clients for consideration and move forward in the interview process pretty rapidly within a couple of days of being presented to our client.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm so glad we got to talk about this part of the process and how we've improved it. I'm really excited to see what else we figure out along the way, but we've been at this for 18 years, and it's always an iteration. We're always learning new things, trying out new interview questions, essay questions, and that is a whole science and an art in itself, because those questions have been honed so carefully for each role over so many responses. Sometimes you think you have a good question, and then you've read answers to it 50 times, and you're like, I'm not getting value out of this question. We have to change it, right?
Exactly.
So we talked about the essay questions. What are some of the other types of questions we ask in the assessment that you think are really insightful?
Honestly, some of the multiple choice questions, right? And those types of questions, yes, they're in there, and it's just a kind of checks and balances. It's more about learning more about the thought process, right? Are we proactively thinking about what's in front of us? So in those multiple choice questions, there is typically one strong answer that is right, but there can be some gray where others can be acceptable. But at the end of the day, it really just lets you understand, like, am I working with someone, or am I talking to somebody who is more of a taskmaster? Or am I talking to somebody who is more of a proactive thinker and that has that type of mindset that's going to drive business, right?